The town of Oakhaven is a place where the sun seems to set a little faster and the shadows stretch a little longer. It's a town built on hushed whispers and ironclad traditions. If you walk down its cobblestone streets, you'll notice a peculiar trend among the older residents. They don't own mirrors with silver frames. In fact, if you find one in an antique shop within 50 miles of the town limits, the owner will likely give it to you for free, just to get it out of the building. They call it the silver frame rule. It's not a superstition. To the people who live here, it's a survival tactic. The rule is simple yet absolute. At exactly 3:17 a.m., if you find yourself in the presence of a silver-framed mirror, you are permitted to look into the glass exactly once. You can check your reflection, you can look at the room behind you, and you can satisfy your curiosity. But under no circumstances, no matter what you hear, no matter what you feel, and no matter what you think you saw, must you ever look a second time. Elias Thorne was not a man who believed in rules, especially ones that defied the laws of physics. Elias was a professional skeptic, a man who had spent a decade debunking haunted locations across the country. When he moved into the old Blackwood Estate on the edge of Oakhaven, he viewed the local legends as nothing more than charming regional flavor. On his first day, while clearing out the attic, he found it. It was tucked behind a stack of moth-eaten curtains, a massive, full-length mirror encased in a frame of tarnished, heavy silver. The silver wasn't smooth. It was wrought into the shape of twisted vines and weeping willow branches that seemed to curl around the glass like skeletal fingers. It was beautiful in a macabre sort of way. Elias, ignoring the cold chill that raced down his spine the moment his skin touched the metal, dragged it down to his bedroom and placed it directly opposite his bed. The first 3 nights were uneventful, but on the 4th night the atmosphere in the house shifted. The air felt thick, as if the oxygen had been replaced with something heavier, something that tasted like ozone and old pennies. At 3:16 a.m., Elias woke up. There was no alarm, no noise, just a sudden, jarring transition from deep sleep to total alertness. He felt a magnetic pull, a physical sensation in his chest drawing his gaze toward the foot of the bed. He looked at his digital clock. The red numbers blinked. 3:17. He looked into the mirror. In the pale moonlight, his reflection was clear. He saw himself sitting up, his face pale, his eyes wide. Everything looked normal. But then he noticed the periphery. In the reflection, the closet door behind him was wide open. In the real room, he knew he had shut it. He felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. His reflection mirrored the movement, but there was a delay. A fraction of a second where the reflection's eyes stayed fixed on him even after he had looked away. Elias remembered the rule. Look once and you're safe. He forced his head down, staring at his hands. His heart was a hammer against his ribs. He waited for the clock to change. He counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was a wet, sliding noise, like a heavy piece of meat being dragged across floorboards. Came from the direction of the mirror. Then, a whisper. A voice that sounded like dry leaves skittering over a gravestone. Elias, look at what I found. The voice didn't come from the room, came from the glass. Elias gripped his bedsheets until his knuckles turned white. Every instinct told him to look, to see what was making that sound, to verify that he was alone. But the rule held him in place. He stared at the floor until the red numbers on the clock finally clicked over to 3:18. The pressure in the room vanished instantly. The air became light again. When he finally dared to look up, the closet door was shut, and the mirror was just a piece of glass reflecting a dark room. He should have destroyed it then. He should have shattered the glass and buried the silver in the woods. But skepticism is a stubborn thing. By the next morning, Elias had convinced himself it was a vivid hallucination brought on by the stress of the move and the local stories. He told himself he was a man of science, and science required replication. He waited for the next night. He prepared. He set up a high-speed camera on a tripod, aimed directly at the mirror. He sat in a chair, a flashlight in his hand, waiting for the clock to strike the forbidden time. 3:15 a.m. The house fell silent. Even the crickets outside seemed to stop their chirping. 3:16 a.m. The heavy, Metallic taste returned to his mouth. 3:17 a.m. Elias turned on the flashlight and looked into the mirror for the first time that night. The beam of light hit the glass and bounced back, illuminating the room. In the reflection, the man was there. The figure he had sensed the night before was now standing in the center of the room, right behind Elias's chair. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that were too long and skin that looked like bruised parchment. It had no eyes, only deep, hollow sockets that leaked a dark, viscous fluid. Elias gasped, dropping the flashlight, clattered to the floor, the beam spinning wildly. He looked away, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Look once and you're safe. He had followed the rule. He was okay. But then the flashlight beam stopped spinning. It pointed directly at the base of the mirror. In the circle of light, Elias saw something that shattered his logic. A hand, a physical, three-dimensional hand with long, gray fingernails, was reaching out from the bottom of the silver frame. It was gripping the real carpet of his bedroom. The silver frame wasn't just a border. It was a doorway that was halfway open. "Don't you want to see the rest?" the voice hissed. It was louder now, vibrating in the very marrow of his bones. "You've always wanted the truth, Elias. Look at me. Look at the truth." The curiosity that had driven his career, the arrogance that had made him mock the locals, and the sheer, primal terror of the unknown all collided. His head began to turn. He fought it. He squeezed his eyes shut. But the sound of the glass rippling, like a stone dropped into a still pond, was too much. Elias Thorne looked a second time. The reflection wasn't his room anymore. It was a vast, gray cathedral of mirrors, stretching infinitely in every direction. Thousands of versions of Elias stood in those reflections, all of them screaming, though no sound came out. The tall, eyeless man was no longer behind him. He was in front of him, leaning out of the silver frame, his cold, wet fingers wrapping around Elias's throat. Elias tried to scream, but the air was sucked out of his lungs as he was jerked forward. He felt the freezing transition, the sensation of passing through a wall of liquid ice. The next morning, the real estate agent found the bedroom empty. The high-speed camera was still on the tripod, but the memory card had been melted into a puddle of plastic. The silver-framed mirror was gone. In the town of Oakhaven, a new rule was whispered among the locals. If you're walking past the old Blackwood Estate at 3:17 a.m., don't look at the windows. Because sometimes, if the moonlight hits the glass just right, you can see a man on the other side. He's pressing his face against the pane, his eyes wide with a terror that never ends, begging for someone to look a second time. Stay away from the silver, ShadowTales. Some rules aren't meant to be broken, and some reflections are more real than the people they mimic.